pound. So I mean, for sure, there'd be like 10,000 people, going up to the moon every week. It's just that there's going to be an economic reason to do it, it'll happen.
Well, there should be a physical reason. There should be a sustaining reason to do it. Not
that's exactly
reason.
that's the nature. That's the nature of
To piggyback off of what he was saying, though, if there's no economic reason to feed the poor on the ground, then it's not going to happen either. Like you're saying, and I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate.
Well,
but I'm saying
we don't live in a dictatorship. You can't kill the poor. You can't.
Well, what I'm saying is, when we talk about doing something for the economic value or doing something just to do it, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that there is no economic benefit in the immediate future to feed starving kids in Africa.
No.
And that's just the sad truth. And when you look at the other aspect of it, you get countries like China that are heavily invested in Africa.
China started investing much more than it was investing during the 1990s all over Africa, in at least 30 countries. They have more than 900 projects all over Africa.
There are many ongoing wars in Africa right now. Namely, you could say in the Congo. I think that's one of our one of the biggest spots in Africa where people can say, you can just point out and say, there's so much devastation going on in the Congo.
Let me interject for a second. In that scenario, what's really going on in Africa is all have like, to me, it's like an international coup. Everybody teamed up to sponsor Africa for them to kill themselves and that they could move in and take land.
Well, they
look
at it like a mine, frankly.
Right, because all the guns and all these artilleries and stuff that these guys used to kill each other, none of them was made in Africa. Where they from? A lot of these so-called sovereign countries, they infiltrate enough of these sectors and groups to divide Africa, where they could clean out this area, where they could use the resources, build their country, and throw the dirt on Africa, saying that
most of the railroads that were built in the 19th century were built towards the ports, because the idea was the railroads
which is why most of the capitals are by the water. They're not in the center of the country, which is why you've got so many unstable countries. I was going to say, that's why most of the capitals were built towards the coast. Most of Africa's capitals are towards the coast. And it leads to a very unstable situation, because you cannot govern fully when you're governing from one little corner in your country. And there's always uprising, there's always rebellion in some of the more unstable countries further off towards the interior.
Africa, Africa's been there for like hundreds of years. The Europeans were there, and somehow whatever happens just doesn't seem to like go anywhere.
To my thinking, a lot of the issue has to do with our rigidity, our lack of adoption of frankly new technologies towards the evolution of sovereign nation states in general. Because, for example, when you're dealing with Africa, you're dealing with issues of energy distribution. Why is it that we're talking about starvation, but starvation is not an issue? I mean, they have fertile land. It's a question of how you create the energy necessary, the physical infrastructure, the irrigation systems necessary for people to then, obviously grow crops and develop a physical economy within a country. Because we've had this free market modality, let's say, especially since the end of World War II, whereby countries are fixated upon generally one crop or whatnot for export because of the currency issue. Most of the time they're struggling to get dollars in order to purchase goods from abroad, and in order to do that they have to fixate on a certain crop, which makes them a monoculture kind of economy, and frankly then they really don't evolve their whole physical infrastructure. So this is
back to the slave trade when
but more people
there's definitely laws. There's definitely laws. I think the key problem is that Africa is a big continent. There are several economic landmines. There are several economic gold spots, you could say, in Africa. You've got places like Egypt. You've got places like South Africa in more recent time. You've got places like Nigeria, Ghana, where there's been more of this. These are more economic beacons of hope in Africa. And unfortunately, you've got your other countries like your DRC. You've got countries like Rwanda up until the late 90s. And there are so many places where, and then Uganda even in some respects. But even to this day, Uganda is one of the most outspoken about HIV and AIDS awareness programs. Even more so than the United States. Uganda has one of the most pervasive HIV and AIDS awareness programs in the world. And yet, then that's like from top down, from government all the way down. Whereas in the United States, we still have so many people in this country living with this this stigma almost, and with very little, I guess, instruction or awareness from government. It's more so these smaller clinics or these smaller programs that we've instituted in this country. So just, there are certain things in Africa that make sense. There are certain things that, like, I agree with you, that don't make sense. But it's not this continent full of war. Each country in Africa, we've got 53 countries in Africa, 54 now actually. And you have to look at them case by case. And yes, there are many similarities. The Europeans definitely came to Africa for a unified reason. You know, it's not like Africa is sitting the way it is right now because of the fact that we just woke up and they stayed like that. You know, there was a specific plot to reap and rape the land for all of its resources. Even to this day, we've got very unequal balance of trade between African countries and the countries that were their former colonizers. So when we look at Senegal, for instance, why is it that there's so many cocoa farmers in Senegal? Why do the Senegalese not plant maize to feed themselves? It's because they're shipping that cocoa to Europe to make chocolate.
But to get the currency. We're talking about a monetary system of money. Let's go back to this point. You see, you're saying, oh, we're not going to space. The private corporations, they have the incentive to go to space. No, the problem is we're thinking in the wrong terms. Money itself is not the incentive. A nation is not incentivized by money. A nation like America especially, which should be the beacon, the model by which every nation in the world should model itself, I think, personally, because I think it's a great country, because it's a republican system. And so the idea is that our government is here by the people, for the people. We choose it, we are part of it, we are citizens, and it's accountable to us. So the idea of basically you have to create an economy. There is no free market. There is no market that's just going to pop up for itself. Gold only has value because people say it has value. Yeah. As soon as what's the intrinsic value of gold? Are you going to carry it with you when you're trying to eat? I mean, if someone will accept it for food, but if I'm starving, I'll take food over your gold any day. So let's think about really what is value.
It's just convenience.
But it is gold has a value. It's got a healing quality. They use it. They use it a lot for healing. That's
very useful. But how few people actually use it? Now we're discovering some techniques.
Yeah, and absolutely, get into the alchemy thing.
It has radiative properties, and it has absolutely
correct.
Immortality.
Alchemy. That's why alchemy, right? They're trying to find immortality by eating gold. Yeah. Perhaps. You want to say something, Chris?
I tend to disagree with the America comment because I feel that in a country that's regarded as so great, you know, our healthcare system has never been universal.
Oh, no. Please, don't get me wrong. By the way, I just want to qualify what I said. I don't mean that America right now, as we stand, has the right to tell anyone else how to be, but I'm saying as a republic based on the Constitution. That's
what I also think
I think that is frankly
the way
want
the government to decide what medicine
I defer on the Constitution because it was
do you want the government to tell you whether you can have treatment?
Sir, I just like to make my comment.
Yeah.
It was a document that was made by a select group of people, excluding women, slaves, and Indians. A long time ago, and that discourse
White men with property.
It's old. The Bill of Rights is old, the Constitution is old, and it's not helping any of us. And the same system you're talking about that was sold out by Kaiser and Nixon, and the tapes that we've heard where they said less care, more money, since that day, people have died, people have lost care. And that is not a system that is progressive for a country that's supposed to lead the way. We are going backwards.
Well, that healthcare system is not a part of the Constitution, though. The Constitution
that was
as a general
but the Constitution
embodiment of principle.
Made by a group of people.
Yes, but here's
power.
Okay, but here's one thing you have to remember.
But other people were powerless. They had no voice.
No. But you never forget one thing. The introductory preface to the Constitution is that it is designed for the general welfare, and that includes everyone who is in the United States.
Chattel slaves? Were they included?
Well, yeah, but the problem is it's a principle. Now, of course, there's like turning people into commodity is barbarous. Just the same way letting people die in the streets is barbarous. But you cannot blame the Constitution for that fact.
So what are we arguing? Are we arguing that the Constitution supports a system of not universal health care? Or you know,
well, I don't think the Constitution particularly protests
that. Right. But that's what I'm saying. So exactly. So what I'm saying is is this panel? And I'm sure everybody's got their own ideas, but in my point of view, a system of universal healthcare is much more democratic than any socialist slander, any socialist comment.
It pertains to the general welfare.
So does the post office, the fire department, school system.
Now,
that's correct. Let's not make healthcare universal.
One second. We'll get into that. We'll get into that in a second.
I know it was like a while back, but you were talking about like the discrimination that America, you said, has shown towards select groups of people, but I feel like we can't point fingers at America because every country, every person, every people has discriminated against someone in the history of time. Like, I just feel like
but
we
that's
can't
America not wanting to accept its history for what it's
right,
worth.
but